This is the video lecture on dependency exemption. Now, dependency exemption is a very important component of tax because we have to determine for each individual person the number of dependency exemptions that they're entitled to. And the reason that makes a difference is the more dependency exemptions that they're entitled to, then the more they're going to be able to deduct as a personal exemption. So that's why it makes a big difference on our taxes. But we do have to be careful and make sure that if a person's going to claim someone as a dependent, that they do legitimately have the right to do that. So in order to figure that out, we're going to go through the rules about dependency exemption. Now, all the rules about dependency exemption are applied in a very particular order. And this first set of rules, this would be your starting point. So in other words, someone that you're working with, they've got a potential person that they think they could claim as their dependent. What is your starting point? Well, here's the starting point. We first have to see if this person meets these requirements, because these are the requirements for all dependents. So first of all, does this person have a social security number? Is this person in fact a U.S. citizen? And then of course, if this person is married, they are not allowed to file a joint return. They would have to file separately. And also, if this person is going to be claimed as a dependent, they can't claim anyone as a dependent when they do their tax return. So these are the overall all-encompassing requirements before we would even consider someone. So the idea is that if we fail one of these four items, then that's the end of it. We don't even proceed any further. But assuming that yes, this person does have a social security number, they are in fact a U.S. citizen, whether or not they're married, they can't file a joint return, and if they have a dependent, they're not going to claim that person if we're going to claim them. And if we can say yes to all four of these, then we would actually proceed to the next set of rules. Now, the next set of rules is called qualifying children. We would first attempt to qualify this person as our dependent under this set of rules. And this set of rules is going to have four different tests that we would apply individually to determine the person's status. And if we can say yes to all four of these, then that means that yes, this person is indeed a qualifying child and we can claim them as a dependent. Now, if we say no to even one of these, then that's not necessarily the end. It just means that we would then have to proceed to yet another set of rules. And that's the thing that usually confuses people, because the rules are going to be different for that set of rules. So under qualifying children, we're going to have a relationship test, an age test, a abode test, and a support test. And like I said, we're hoping to say yes to all four of these, because a no even to one of them means we would have to then use a different set of rules. So the relationship test. Who qualifies? All children, whether they are naturally born children, adopted children, foster children, or stepchildren. That's a relationship that definitely meets this test. But not only children, also siblings, whether they are a full sibling, half, or step siblings, or any descendants of any of the above. So that could include grandchildren and so forth. So anyone that qualifies under that set of rules, they meet the relationship test. We would say yes. The next test is the age test. So just because someone is our child and qualifies under test number 1, it's not over. We have to then apply all these other tests. And according to the age test, we have 3 options. If the person is under the age of 19, then they pass the test. If they are under the age of 24, but also a full-time student, then yes, they qualify for this test. Or if it is a child that has been determined to be permanently disabled, then it doesn't matter what age they are. So it's under 19 or under 24 and a full-time student or permanently disabled. And by the way, if they're under 24 and only a part-time student, not good enough. It means that they do not meet the age test. Then there is an abode test. It means that they have to have the same abode. In other words, they have to live in the same residence as the parent for more than half the year. If they do, then that means they meet the abode test. The only way to really get out of that test would be in situations of a divorce. And in that case, usually the custodial parent would have the child living in the home for the majority of the year. And usually, even though the child might spend some time with the non-custodial parent, usually they're not with that parent for more than half the year. But a non-custodial parent could claim the child, but they would have to get written permission from the custodial parent. So that's the abode test. And then the support test. The child cannot provide more than half of their own support. So if a person could say yes, they qualify in the relationship. Yes, they qualify in terms of their age. Yes, they qualify in terms of the abode, and yes, on support. If you can say yes to all four of those tests, then that person does qualify as a dependent. But if we say no even to one of them, then we have to proceed to yet another set of rules. So the second set of rules is a set called qualifying relative. We would only go to these rules as a last resort. In other words, we could not claim the person under the child rules. So as a result, this is a last effort to try to get this person to qualify. And under this set of rules, there are only 3 tests. And that would be the relationship test, gross income, and support. Now notice that this relationship test is different. And that does lead to a certain amount of confusion. The relationship test for qualifying relative is actually different from the relationship test for qualifying child. And under this relationship test, they either must be related or reside in the home for the entire year. So in other words, it could be related. It could be an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a cousin. Or it could even be a total stranger, as long as they lived in the home the entire year. So, say that it's a stranger, say that it's an elderly person that you take care of. If they don't live in your home literally the entire year, then they fail the relationship test. Then you have a gross income test. That test simply says that this person's income has to be less than the amount of a personal exemption for that year. And of course, the amount of personal exemption, that changes every year. But whatever year this is, their income has to be less than that amount for that year. And then finally, a support test. The dependent must not provide more than half of their own support. So the idea is that if you couldn't qualify this person as a dependent under the qualifying child rules, then you go to qualifying relative. If you can say yes to all 3 of those, then yes, you could claim them as a dependent. But unfortunately, if you say no to one of the qualifying relative rules, then of course that means that it's over. And unfortunately, that means that that person cannot be claimed as a dependent.